Shanghai, city of endless possibilities. Over the last 20 years, this Chinese capital of culture has blossomed both horizontally and vertically, transforming the urban landscape of the region.
Pudong used to be a marshland, so there was very little construction here. And then Beijing decided that the area of Lusha Sui would be used to showcase China, with a desire to build 1,800 office towers in this area alone.
Shanghai's transformation has had a radical effect on its population, which is rapidly catching up with the global consumer society.
The economy has gotten better. People have gotten wealthier, have more time to think not just about work.
These changes have unfortunately led to severe environmental degradation, making daily life just that much more challenging.
We plant tomato plants and snap peas from seed every year. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, we haven't been able to leave them outside in the balcony because they would just die.
But fear not, Shanghai will undoubtedly find a solution to its pollution concerns. As history has proven time and time again, the Pearl of the Orient has always been a leader rather than a follower. Shanghai's urban development happened at a frantic pace. Within 10 years, more than 20 million square meters of housing were demolished, expropriating 2.5 million people. This major reorganization of space now threatens the city's historic districts.
This is the entrance of Lilong. Lilong in Chinese, Li is a neighborhood and Long is a lane. So this is alley lane housing. This was before 1949. More than 60% of Shanghai's residents lived in public housing like these. On top, it has the name of the alley. So in this case, it's called Zhangyuan, as in the Garden of Zhang. This actually used to be a domestic destination for Chinese tourists that would come and want to have a sense of what, Shikumen housing is like.
Nowadays, who lives here?
There's still Shanghai residents, but a lot of these old public housing, a lot of migrant workers live here because, as Shanghainese people get richer, they want modern housing, high rises. So you have a lot of old residents, as you can tell, and a lot of people from out of Shanghai. Shikumen means stone hedge door. So they were first built in 1840s, and so they've evolved differently over the course of the decades.
I see.
And so Shikumen is a type of architecture that is very unique to Shanghai, and it is within a Lilong. Traditionally, what it is that the neighborhood is encased, so it's very quiet. So it's what you call a domestic public life. So you are encased by all the shops on the outside, and then you have the lanes, which built a community. So on the one hand, you could have your own housing, but you could just sit out here, drink tea and chat with your neighbors as they cook, dinner. Sometimes you have these sinks that people wash their hairs or, wash their vegetables. So it's a very integrated, it's a very collective lifestyle. And this kind of lifestyle, I suppose, as Shanghai modernizes, it's not maybe suited for a lot of people. Nowadays, young people and families prefer privacy. As you can see over here, the doors are all open. You notice the front and the back, they're all open because there's a sense of safety. Right. But clearly, this is a very old neighborhood, so they all know each other. If anything bad happens, I'm pretty sure someone's watching. In fact, that guy is watching us right now. So, and he will tell everyone by tonight. So. 他问这边几户家？
我们这里啊，我们这里有好多家了，
好多几家？
龙阿拉有几家人家？一共几家？18家。
18 families.
18 families.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite modest. It's a very big place. And they're all old neighbors.
没有我们这里这么多。我们这里这个房子是最大。
Oh, they have the largest house in this neighborhood.
你好，放心啊。
Each family has its own stove.
Yeah. Yes, I suspect. See these boxes right here? They cover up their stoves.
Right.
Yeah.
What happened with the light?
Somebody will switch it off inside.
Okay.
谢谢。
谢谢. So everybody's got their own light? Is that?
是每一个人都有自己的灯吗？
对，
是哦 ，yes。
那个社区公益，社区公益跟我们来装的。住了已经50年快。
你50年了
啊？我已经30年了，
你
儿子都
30年
结婚了。
啊，恭喜恭喜恭喜 ！She's been here 30 over years.
Would they like to move into the buildings, the apartment buildings?
在住老石库门的户呢，他们说有机会搬到
新房子去。
新房子，
那我们肯定愿意啊。
Of course, she said absolutely.
房子大了嘛，空间大了。
Yeah, she says more space.
我们
Why
现在
not?
空间太小了。
It's too small at the moment.
我婆婆又要吃饭，又要睡觉。
Yeah, she says like her mother-in-law, has to play here, eat here, and then she sleeps. This is her bed.
舒服一点嘛。
It used to be much bigger, but now it's just her, so she got a smaller bed, so they can have a mahjong table.
这里啊，这个就是。
What's that game, Sue-Ann?
Mahjong. Oh, just,
I don't know it. Oh, look at that! Another one. Okay.
This is one of the largest Lilong housing in Shanghai, and also one of the oldest. It started building in 1914. Yeah, I think they completed it around 1920. When it was first built, it housed over 600 families. And it's quite typical. A lot of, the architecture style that you see and the functional nature of the housing, dense, and just to have families live there. And to squeeze as many as possible so you can get as much money out of it.
So this is an example of a neighborhood that will be destroyed. For housing projects, we don't know.
Housing projects, I heard museums, I don't know.
The people who lived here live where now?
They probably have housing elsewhere. When a property like this is going to be torn down, the government goes through a process through their local districts and their residents committees, and they negotiate with every family on how they want to sell. So some families take the compensation early, some take a longer time to negotiate, some hold out, and that's where you get a lot of stories about, they feel compensation's insufficient, for their housing.
Neighborhoods like these ones, will they still exist in a couple of years in Shanghai?
Before 1949, I read somewhere that over 60% of housing in Shanghai are Lilong housing. Obviously, that percentage has gone down. I don't think that they will disappear completely, but you will definitely see less of it. And as a Shanghainese photographer said to me, he worries that one day the next generation will only see shukumen in a museum, and it's a heritage.
Right.
That is so rapidly disappearing that it could disappear in one generation.
The disappearance of shikumens is making way for a unique hyper-modernization. The impact can be seen here in Luqiashui, the international financial neighborhood located in Pudong.
This is the city in which there are the most architects in the world. People from every corner of Europe are here to work because there are so many opportunities and business is booming. In a way, this is where you want to be right now. Pudong used to be a marshland, so there was very little construction here. There were still a few factories, some spaces for boats, some low-end residential buildings, so all these things were relocated and people were expropriated. You have to understand that Pudong had no bridges linking it to the rest of the city. That's why it was swampy and industrial, because of the lack of bridges. In the 80s, the first tunnel was built, and then a second. And Beijing finally decided that this area of Lushasui would be used to showcase China. They continued to build bridges and ran into challenges with regards to the infrastructure, which called for huge financial investments. Eventually, a master plan was drawn up to create this new section of Pudong, facing the shore of Puxi, as a new economic hub, with a desire to build 1,800 office towers in this area alone. That's a pretty crazy project. There are several sections in the greater Pudong, areas dedicated to industry, others for high-tech development, and even some for individual and collective housing. The desire is to supplant the financial standing of Hong Kong so that Shanghai could become the financial hub of Asia. So there's a continuous chain of new buildings. First, there was the Pearl Tower in the 90s. Then there was this amazing tower, the Jin Mao, which is really something. For the cost, it's a real success because it has incorporated so many elements: Chinese culture, the Art Deco style of Shanghai, and obviously modernity. For the Chinese, Pudong is the lung of Shanghai. There is a concern for environment, a concern for green space. In my opinion, people who live in the villas of Pudong have a better air quality than those who live in Puxi.
Qui habite à Pudong?
In this section, it's mostly offices and hotels. There are also some luxury apartments worth impossible amounts of money, some as much as 150,000 to 180,000 RMBs per square meter. And rental apartments also fetching up to 50,000 and even 100,000 RMBs per month. In the rest of Pudong, you'll find lots of regular houses, luxury homes, apartment buildings, and even low-income housing. A large part of foreigners living in Shanghai have chosen to live on the Pudong side because many companies have their offices here. It's a comfortable place to live in, to have a house with a garden or a condominium. One very impressive element you'll notice is the way Shanghai is lit up at night. It really contributes to the beauty of the city. I think Shanghai is more beautiful by night than by day. It's quite spectacular. You have the facades that are illuminated by huge LED systems, the type of thing you won't see anywhere else. If you go to Japan or Tokyo after you've been to Shanghai, you won't be impressed. See, this building is beginning to light up. All this ends at 11 p.m. It all turns off at 11 for environmental reasons and to save energy. But when this part of town lights up, it's just extraordinary. When you see this bright skyline, this city of light from Puxi on the other side, from the Bund, to me, it's even more beautiful than New York City.
Shanghai has adapted surprisingly well to this architectural revolution. Over the last decade, major investments have completely redesigned roads and public transit. But Didier, a French businessman who has rebuilt his life here, still prefers a more traditional way of getting around, the good old bicycle.
Is it safe to bike in Shanghai like we are doing now?
Well, everything is safe in Shanghai, and biking is also safe. Just you have to pay attention to the non-said rules. Of course, you have regulations, but you have to pay attention and respect other people also, as the road is shared by many kind of transportation means. You have to pay attention.
So you don't have bicycle paths here, or very few?
They are, but they're also shared by bikes, sometimes pedestrians, and some weird things is sometimes you take those paths in both ways. Just the priority is just don't block other people. But you have a feeling after biking in Shanghai to be very close to Shanghainese. We have all these pictures of the Chinese people biking for years to go to work, to go back to their homes.
Yes.
And that's the real way to be a Chinese.
Okay, the light is red, but...
And nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Okay, we care. It's a dance. I feel like I'm in a Shanghai dance.
Well,
And I don't know the steps. It's
Well,
quite fun, though. It's quite fun.
It's not.
It's never a boring day here.
No.
Is it easy and safe to use bikes in the city?
Well, it's pretty safe, although Westerners can be sometimes a bit puzzled by the noise and the volume of the traffic. But if you get used to it, there's no problem. Just use the bell.
Public transit in Shanghai is extremely well developed. The city boasts the second longest subway system in the world after Seoul, and it deploys 16,000 buses to cover some 1,000 routes. That's 7 times more than in Tokyo.
Shanghai looks a bit chaotic. Is it easy to get around in this city?
Well, that's pretty easy to do so. You can get whatever means of transportation you might need depending on the place you go and in a hurry you are. So first of all, you have a metro network, a subway network, which is highly developed. If you have a car, it's also quite easy to go in and out of the city since you have those elevated highways crossing into the city. And then again, if you don't have all these things, you can just raise your hand, get an easy taxi, or just simply use a bike.
The subway system, is it very efficient?
Well, it's quite efficient. Many people use it nowadays, especially people working in the city and living sometimes outside.
And there are many stops covering the whole city and beyond even.
Yeah, that's true. You can now use the subway to go even 40 kilometers outside the city until the Yangtze River. So that's pretty far. And so many stops and many lines.
Is it very expensive to buy a car?
Yeah, it's pretty expensive for Chinese people, probably the same price than in Europe. But here the specificity is that you will have a big tax depending on the city you live. To buy a plate here, just the matriculation plate, you will have probably to add 30% more on the price of the car. So which means only quite rich people can afford.
Would you say that Shanghai is a role model for public transport?
Actually, many urban designers are studying what has been done in Shanghai. Compared to other cities, this is probably a very good balance between people, transportation, and also green parts of the city, try to planify the areas, and yeah.
It's been well thought of.
I think so.
We're going to see Peggy Liu this morning. She is a leader in environmental studies. It's interesting, a little ironic. She actually didn't want to go out because the quality of the air this morning is so bad. She'd rather stay inside where she has an air purifier and where we can breathe nicely.
If you go back 20 years, it was much more polluted, and that's because we had steel mills like right in the center of the city, which for the expo, they started moving all the heavy industry outside the borders of central Shanghai, and that really helped a lot. But if you think about where pollution comes from, one is coal-fired power generation. Shanghai is much better than, let's say, Beijing in that way, in that I think a lot of our energy is actually from nuclear energy. Things like traffic, especially diesel engines, are very bad, and so one of the issues is when you bring in roads, you'll have cars, right? So it's great that we have better infrastructure, but what we should really be focusing on is public transport. We have been urbanizing for the last 23 years. We're in the middle of a 40-year urbanization process. And when I say urbanizing, I don't mean building a cute little house or a cute little green building here or there. I'm talking about moving 350 million people into cities over 20 years. All right, I'm talking about building 10 New York cities. All right, so think of all that construction dust that's coming in. I mean, you could just look at that construction crane to see that's clearly affecting, you know, our habitat. So we plant tomato plants and snap peas from seed every year. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, we haven't been able to leave them outside in the balcony because they would just die. Right now, it's so important for us as we talk about what is the China dream. What could that look like of China with blue skies, not this sky. We show China of, you know, in nature versus no nature or above nature. One of the important tenets of, I think, urbanization is that we have to live closer together and we have to live vertically. So the closer you live, the less you'll need transportation. Right, so ideally within 1 square kilometer, you have all the conveniences that you need for daily life. And ideally you can commute via the high-speed rail or through subway, et cetera, versus a car. And so Shanghai, in many ways, is starting to really exemplify those, you know, close living, right? Livable living, convenient living, connected living. And that is green living.
What about the water? The situation with the drinking water, the clean water?
Other than the times when 18,000 pigs are floating down the Huangpu River, the rivers are still polluted. In fact, 90% of our waterways are polluted. So there is no clean drinking water to speak of in China. And so I think giving everybody access to affordable, clean drinking water that doesn't come out of a plastic bottle that's shipped from Fiji is really important to the survivability of China. And that's not just citizens, right? It affects our agriculture. 40% of our water goes to watering our plants, and not in a very efficient way.
So you never drink water out of the faucet?
Oh my God. Again, you're totally taking that for granted. You're talking like a New Yorker. Just kidding. But no. I mean, I can show you this whole house water filter that I installed when we built this apartment.
Okay. Who has that in Shanghai? I mean, they're in every apartment building.
Yes, usually apartments will have them. Then we have point-of-use water filters. Right? So if you look underneath, you'll see water filters at each of the sinks that we use to drink or to cook our foods. That's the filter right there. Don't ever rinse the vegetables with non-filtered water. Always use this.
What is acceptable? When do you go out? When do you not go out? How does it work?
Today, I mean, moms, parents, they have these AQI, air quality index apps on their phone that they check every day. There's many things that you can measure, but PM 2.5, how many particulates of a certain size or below are floating in the air that can get into your lungs and never come out. So that's what we're really looking at. And the World Health Organization actually says 35 is the maximum safe level. Unfortunately, today, for you, it's closer to 200. You know, the way I view Shanghai is that we're a little bit in a bubble, right? So many other countries, you can take for granted clean air, clean water, clean food, and you can really enjoy nature. But here, you have to protect yourself against nature. And it's the nature that man has made for ourselves, unfortunately. You can take a look 190. Again, remember maximum World Health Organization 35, right?
Okay,
So
way above.
Then you look, okay, indoors is actually about 100, so you divide this by about 100.
Okay.
But we don't have this on, but if I were to turn this on, you'll see that this will immediately start dropping down. It might take a while, but this will probably drop down to closer to 35. The numbers that parents are concerned with are, at what levels should I have my child wear a mask? At what levels should my child not go outside and play during recess, right? Those are the questions that I care about. I don't really care about the 35,
Right.
per se. So
Get to
I'm
where-
sorry I don't have an extra mask for you.
That's okay. I'm
gonna
just
put mine
visiting.
on. So it's going to 184. Remember, my AQI apps is 190, but that's a little bit far away.
Right.
And I'm also 29 floors above.
It varies,
Right.
depending where
Right.
you live. That's unbelievable,
Yeah.
the things you have to think
So
about.
right now, it's about 175, 180 here, right here. This is very funny.
It is.
Pollution is not a short-term issue that we can fix at all, right? So the local government is very concerned, and the central government, the Beijing government, has really done some very interesting things to really try and fix the problem.
Despite the threatening pollution and the increasing cost of living, people continue to flock to Shanghai. But the average annual salary is about $10,000, while cost of living is actually similar to that of major Western cities. And the average price of a one-bedroom apartment in the city center is $1,000 per month. Anyone else have doubts about the reality of raising a family in Shanghai?
This is your neighborhood?
Yeah, this is my neighborhood. The northwestern part of Shanghai. It's between the third ring road and the middle ring road. We call it Jiangqiao neighborhood. Yeah, a lot of residential apartments are located in this area. It's a big, big block, compound for people to live. And also, it's not that busy. You know, you can see some relaxation. You can find some quiet corners as well, you know, when you're not working like that.
Was it easy for you to find an apartment here?
Yeah, it's very easy. But even though it's easy, it's still quite expensive at the moment. I mean, in Shanghai or China, I would reckon 80% of the people will buy an apartment before they get married. Because in China, as a rule, or as a tradition, you have to own a property before before people wanted to get married to you. You can have your fiancé, you can do the proposal, but it has to be you have a home or permanent property before the marriage.
If you don't have your own apartment or home, you can't get married.
In normal cases.
And
yeah, that's true.
that was your case?
Yes, that's my case as well.
That's a lot of pressure.
A car will be needed as well on the wedding day, a brand new car. That's also requested by the the parents of the female. Yeah, normally.
So do the boys prepare themselves very early on for those important investments?
Yeah, normally the marriage itself will take like 2 years, so that you can get ready for that. In terms of the financial part, or to relocate a brand new apartment, ready for the marriage.
Hello, Bobby.
What's your name?
What's your name?
I mean, tell her what your name is. There is a saying in China: if you give a birth to a son, then you lost 1 million already, because normally it's the son, it's the man who buy the apartment or house to get married. Shanghai is very fast-paced, so you have to work very hard.
The single child policy, it still exists?
It still exists, but in Shanghai, it's a little bit different from the other cities. The population has a very serious aging problem. While people who is over 60 years old is about becoming 25-something% of the entire population in Shanghai, which is really a big problem, considering the other part. In the entire China, the population structure is like from 8 to 10% for the people who is over 60 years old. So in year 2009, the government of Shanghai, they decided that the parents can give birth to another child as long as the parents are only children as well.
Would you have had more children?
Because we didn't meet that kind of requirements, because hukou is very, very important.
What's hukou?
Hukou is a kind of a family card, It's permanent with all members written on it.
Right.
The status of it will be reported in that, that kind of booklet, yeah? In the history, in year 2003, and before that, if you buy a house or apartment in Shanghai, you can get your hukou moved to Shanghai permanently. But by that period of time, I didn't have money to pay for the apartment, so I didn't do that. But after, in year 2005, I bought my apartment, but that policy has changed already. So we all are not genuine Shanghainese at the moment because we don't have the hukou. Our hukou is still in my little county, my hometown.
There are things that you can't do if you don't have your identity from Shanghai.
如果没有户口，有户口跟没有户口的区别在哪里？
在上海啊。
Well, firstly, because in China we have a new policy or new rules in terms of purchasing or buying the apartment. Because the prices, is rising like a rocket. So the government is thinking of ways to prevent that from, going up again continuously. Then in Shanghai, we had a local rule saying that you are not a local people who has the hukou in Shanghai, then you are not allowed to buy the apartment.
Okay, but you got the apartment just before that new rule?
That new rule was just issued like last year.
Sometimes are you tired of all the rules?
I'm very tired of all kinds of rules, actually. Yeah. Well, it's quite difficult the competition is really strong or serious in Shanghai, especially to trying to get a better education for the younger generation. There are so many people just in order to, have a better school for their children, they will pay a lot of money to buy an apartment which is located to somewhere, in a good neighborhood
with
That's
good
true.
school.
That's true. His kindergarten, is quite expensive. Compared to other school, it's better, and you can see how worried the fathers are, trying to let him not lose right in the beginning,
Right since kindergarten, you want him to be at the best kindergarten, learning English early, so he can compete.
Absolutely, that's
with the rest.
True. Yes.
Both of you work. Both of you need to work.
Yeah, everyone need to work. I try to let him work as well, but he doesn't want.
In a year.
In a year, probably.
Bobby! Oh, that's beautiful, Bobby. With this new openness to the world, local values are certainly being put to the test. Young people are at odds with the lifestyle their grandparents grew up in. The present is guided by a consumer culture, a need for leisure, and a new thing called individualism. So you start when you're young girls, you start going out at 21, not before?
21. No, because our
quite focused on studying.
The focus of
after I entering the university, I got more freedom to go out with friends.
What do your parents say?
They're so strict. At first, I didn't tell my parents, and as time goes by, I told my mom, but she said, okay, as long as you don't drink or smoke, you know, you don't get the bad habits, it's okay.
Why don't they want you to go out?
Too dangerous.
Too dangerous?
Yeah, that's a culture thing, right? Traditional people.
Right. And is it dangerous?
No, it's so safe here,
It's very
especially Shanghai.
Yeah. You have a boyfriend, but they don't know?
I have to say, start from 21. I had the first relationship. I didn't let them know till 24. It was only 3 years.
Because it's not acceptable to have a boyfriend and to
They have to check a lot about your family, about everything. In their opinion, like, they want to find your partner, like life partner, should be the one who can take care of you. So they are more strict, more serious than us.
Some Chinese guys, they're too traditional. They think if they don't have the power to give you a good life, they don't accept you. But sometimes you just want to tell them that you don't care about that.
In our age, I would like to say, you're living in a very high-pressure societies. You consider about marriage, your living, your kids, how we can get our goals, live better, and life better. So,
if the ladies don't get married and decide not to have children, that's fine? Is that fine?
No. The problem was come from their parents.
Is there a lot of pressure on education as well? Getting a good education, getting in good schools?
Job.
Yeah, to eventually get a good job? Is that a reality as well?
That's the basic to get a good job. And parents also see the partner, like life partner, also see like, what kind of education, right? They will ask.
Which school you graduated from?
Yeah.
That's
Okay, that's a bad school.
that's best school.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, you can have a relationship with this guy. He's good.
Depending on the
educated.
school.
Right. I always tell him if I get another chance, I don't want to receive Chinese education. What I mean is I want to just directly like study abroad or something. But it didn't mean I want a passport or something, no. Just because I feel I waste too much time to cooperate with parents, the teachers, the diplomas. But finally, it turns out I'm doing something I really don't like.
Yeah. My parents, they just want me to be a normal person. But I said I want to be a film director or advertisement planner in the future. Really, I can make really good stuff to the world, to the people. But they said, you don't need to do that, just get the stable money and live a stable life, because that's what their whole life is like. And we just got fight on this point.
People here aren't taught to dream, I think, in a lot of ways. So, for example, most people don't have hobbies. They don't really have a lot of extracurricular activities. And when you're in school, you just go to school, the whole day. And most classes are based around rote memorization as opposed to essays. So, and I think that's had a huge influence on how people approach careers in life and everything. So that's why when people go abroad to study, for example, it's usually, very practical things. They don't go to study anthropology. They go to study finance. They do like taxation, corporate financing, things that you can get a job and like a passport with.
The purchasing power of a new middle class can be seen in the growing praise for gastronomy, fashion, and luxury goods. A recent interest for art in this new bourgeois society has converted Shanghai into a refined art hub. China now accounts for nearly 50% of the global art market.
This is a M50 area or Morgan Shanlu. It's next to the Suzhou Creek. And it used to be this textile factory, actually. And I think it dates all the way back to the 30s and 40s, and it just kept all the way through the communist era. But then by the 80s and 90s, they started to need bigger facilities, and it was sort of slowly abandoned.
This would be the main area now.
Yeah, this would be the main area. Actually, now I would say in terms of contemporary art, there's probably like 3 or 4 areas. Like this is one, a cluster around the Bund, a cluster around the French Concession, and then also in the Red Town, Minsheng Museum, Red Town. There's basically a lot of new museums that are being built right now in Shanghai. In the Shanghai Museum, that's more traditional. The Power Station of Art, which is actually China's first contemporary art museum built by the state. But actually what's a little bit crazy, a little bit disorienting is how many private museums are being built. I can, you know, right now there's a museum boom, especially in Shanghai. It's almost where every 3 to 6 months a new museum is being built. And these are not, I'm not talking about tiny little museums. These are massive, you know, things where people, some billionaire just says, well, I want to have my own museum. I don't want a gallery. I know I'm a billionaire. I want a museum worthy of me, you know.
And that's totally fine with the state?
Yeah, yeah, oh, they're completely fine, actually. No, they're completely fine because these people are putting money into development, you know.
Do you think Shanghai wants to be a cultural destination?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. It held the World Expo in 2010, and it made sure it was the biggest expo, you know, ever, you know. It's partly, you know, soft power, partly attracting tourism, but I think there is a genuine aspect to it. But it is actually a big population, you know? And I think as the economy has gotten better, people have more, you know, just gotten wealthier, have more time to think not just about work or, you know, how to survive. I think this is a natural thing. I mean, along with shopping, along with cafes, art is one of these things that it's quite natural for people, I think, to like and enjoy. Before 1949, when the communists liberated China, Shanghai was, without any dispute, the cultural, literary, film capital of China. And in fact, because it was so open to the rest of the world, unlike Beijing, it was actually the first foreign influence. In some ways, it's never truly gained it back. Film, for example, is still in Beijing. Literature, much more in Beijing. This is one of the, actually one of the first galleries to come, to move to this area, and they are the biggest and most famous gallery, Shang Art. A lot of art that's shown here, probably maybe 15 years ago, couldn't have been shown. So I don't know, I mean, there's an opening, but then there's also clear limits. There are clear lines. However, I can say what's interesting is, out of the big cities, Shanghai is probably one of the more stricter ones, actually.
Really?
In terms of art, at least, in terms of visual arts.
You would think the contrary.
Yeah, you would think the contrary, but actually no, you know. Beijing is actually, in some ways, a little bit freer, and Guangzhou also a little bit freer because it's close to Hong Kong. We've noticed that there are a few art spies who come around to every exhibition to take a look at the content, to take a look. I feel like half the time they don't really understand it, you know, especially for the more conceptual stuff. But they do, you know, they have actually, I can say, I know of specific cases where they actually censored people. It's not perhaps what you think in the West, oh, well, you're arrested and put in jail. No, it's not really like that. There's a really well-calibrated system to let you know what kind of path you're taking and make you reflect and think, are you going to keep going down that path or not? If there's something really serious, they can close down the gallery. At a certain point, they can detain you, but that's usually much further down the line. So, but there are different steps. They let you know that any step, at any point, you can stop, and they'll be okay with you. So that's sort of how censorship, in fact, it's actually self-censorship. On the surface, yes, it is actually still a very repressive state, but what's interesting is actually they're allowing people to err a lot more. They're allowing people a lot more room. And the feeling, or perhaps the belief, I hope it's real, is that they'll slowly ease up over the years.
Shanghai has unquestionably become the fuel of Chinese growth. It is also the face of a new China. Modern, open-minded, cosmopolitan, and even capitalistic. This may be a telling sign of the future of this vast country, or just a simple sign that Shanghai remains what it has always been: deeply independent, contradictory, and quite unique.